Hello, welcome back to Food for Thought. Today we wanted to dive into a topic that we literally, I feel like, one, we do every single day, but two, we talk to people about all the time. And after listening to our first Food for Thought video, we talked a lot about how we process emotion. And so I thought today would be a great day to dive into what does that actually mean and what does that look like for us personally, and hopes that maybe that would give you a few nuggets or a few things to practice, a few things to maybe incorporate into your life that are helpful. So today is all about that.
Yeah, and I was just gonna do a quick little introduction. I'm Christine Landel and Jen Ream. If you haven't watched us before, we're sisters and best friends. We're also business partners with Vibe Well, and this is actually our fourth business. So we are passionate, conscious entrepreneurs and passionate about a lot of things, I should say. Wellness overall, holistic wellness and nutrition, bringing us all into new earth and with sanity and peace and all kinds of love and light and all the BS that comes along with that.
Yeah, and just doing our best to follow where we're led these days, and which always is around health and wellness. And so today, let's dive right into, I think we'll do a whole series or a whole show on our morning practice, because that is a huge part of how we set up our day. But a lot of times, you will find that if you're going through a lot of stress, one, you're not sleeping great, or you'll wake up feeling a little tense, and that's a great time to work through a meditation or try to process some of the emotion that you're feeling. So a lot of times if I'm feeling something or I wake up heavy and I can just kind of sense that there's something that is like sitting with me, I will look through and do a meditation, a guided meditation through Insight Timer that is relative to how I'm feeling. So if I feel like I just need to clear my energy, sometimes I'll just do an energy clearing, and that is helpful. So just literally going through all my chakras and just trying to clear everything out. Sometimes the energy that we're feeling or the heaviness that we're feeling is not even ours. And that is so important to even recognize. We go through the world picking up other people's energy, and if you work in a space, we find that a lot of times people in service pick up other people's energy. Or if you've ever been told or you feel that you're an empath, you pick up other people's energy. It's just natural. We're all connected. We're all consciousness. So you're going to feel that sometimes. So sometimes it's just good to do an energy clearing meditation, breathe through your chakras, try to release everything, and have a fresh start. I just did that the other day, literally the other day, because I felt it and I didn't even know that if it was mine. And then there's other times where we know something triggered us. We know something, somebody triggered us, or something triggered us, something we read triggered us. And it's interesting because when that happens, it really has nothing to do with the other person or the other thing. It's a trigger of something we are holding on to inside of us. So it's either from a situation that happened to us when we were kids, or a past trauma. And it literally just like hits that bruise within you, that you can kind of think of it like that. It hits that bruise and kind of like wants to bump up against it and make you feel it again. But that bruise could be anger. It could be frustration. It can be sadness, like an overwhelming sadness. And that stuff can stay with us. So for me personally, when I feel an emotion or I'm just feeling it, I like to feel where it's at in my body. So I will say, okay, where am I feeling this? Is it in my jaw? Am I feeling it in my shoulders? Am I feeling it in my chest? Am I feeling it in my stomach? We kind of tend to have certain areas that we feel it that come up for us regularly. And I find that certain emotion sits with me in certain places. A lot of times it's our gut, so we have a lot of gut issues. So I tend to, if I feel the emotion coming up, I will sit with that emotion. And I'll close my eyes and I'll feel it. And I'll kind of just be like, where is it? What size is it? Is it like the size of an apple? Is it like the size of a walnut? Like, where is it sitting in my body? And give it a name, give it a size, give it a feeling, and just breathe into it. Like if you can picture it, like, oh, it feels like the size of like an apple, and you just picture it. And maybe it's sadness. So you will literally just focus and cry
He needs to go outside. He can wait a minute. Murphy.
Murphy,
a minute.
This is reality.
This is life.
So I tend to feel into the emotion and try to feel it exactly how it is. So if it's sadness, I might start crying and feel it and actually just be with it and stay and stay and stay as long as you can until you've breathed, you feel it releasing. So every time you take a deep breath, you're kind of blowing out that emotion. Okay, so I literally will breathe in and breathe out and imagine and visualize that emotion leaving my body. And the nuts and bolts of that is sticking with it, staying until you feel differently. So you feel like you've released it, or you feel like it's no longer there, or you feel like it's smaller wherever it's at. That is the gold right there. So that when you get up from working through this feeling, you feel better, you feel new. It's not like it's not going to come up again. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it might feel better the next time, or it's not triggering you as much. The bruise is going away. The more you work on it, the more it goes away. So that's personally one of my main tools for processing emotion. I'll let you kind of share some of yours or one of yours. I would also say journaling, but I can go into that too. But yeah, that's my main one.
Yeah, I think the first step for me, to be honest, is just that awareness around the emotion that and just being with it. I love to be in stillness with it. Recognizing it, I think, is a huge part of it. What happens a lot of times is the emotion comes up and then we project it onto others, and we blame others, and we put all of those frustrations and that anger onto others for something that they did, versus us taking very radical responsibility for the feelings that are coming up within us and working through those. And so I have a couple different ways of doing things, and things that sometimes I just like to talk it out with somebody. That is really important to me. I like to communicate how I'm feeling, especially with the person that maybe triggered me. And if it's somebody that I don't want to do that with, then I'll call Jen. And then, so that to me is very healing, is to be able to talk it out with the person in a non-confrontational way. But first and foremost, I would say anytime anger, frustration, fear, those types of feelings come up for me, I definitely recognizing it, being aware of it, and then sitting with it. Usually in meditation, I will find a specific meditation in Insight Timer, and that will basically alchemize that feeling within me and neutralize it so that I can come to a more blissful, peaceful, harmonizing feeling within. And so I think it's important to deep dive in a lot of times for me, that will be talking to God and talking to my higher self about why this is coming up for me and where it's coming from. So then if you can kind of look at the why behind it, then you can get down to the root cause of it. And that's something that we both love, is where is this coming from? What is the root cause of it? And so that is super important. And a lot of times when you do that and you sit in stillness with those feelings, you might have an image come up from childhood. You might have an image come up from your adult lifetime. So it's your 20s, your 30s, depending on how old you are. But we're in our 40s, and so a lot of the lessons learned throughout the years happened in our teens and 20s, and so there's a lot of things for us that come from those times in our lives. And so just kind of getting down to the bottom of where it's coming from, and that in itself is so healing to know. Okay, yeah, that was recognizing it, and then finding compassion for yourself that you feel that way and that you are ready to let it go. And so I think that for me is another piece is excuse me, verbalizing that I want to release this and I want to let it go, and I'm cutting ties with this scenario, this feeling, this person. And so that, I would say, almost every single time, that is how I handle processing emotion. I 100% believe in sitting with your feelings before you spew out into somebody else and blame them. That is obviously, I would say a long time ago, probably how I would handle something like that in a confrontational way. But now, knowing there's just so many healthier ways to go about doing this, I think it's so important to sit with an emotion for at least 24 hours before you handle it with another person that could be confrontational.
I would just add to that, when you're in the moment, you're heated. Like, let's say you're angry, you're sad, you're kind of clouded, and you're not going to be a good judge of the words that are going to come out of your mouth. And you're not going to be clear about how you are really feeling and why. So this actual sitting with it and having awareness that's why we say that's the gold. Because then when you actually process the emotion and you feel it releasing, then you can go into journaling or asking God, sit in prayer, or ask your higher self, what is it? Where is that coming from? Where did that just come from? And that's when you might get the vision. I literally will never forget the specific time that I had an emotion that I was working through. And I sat with it. I know I called Christine after, and I was like, oh my gosh, I had this clear vision of something that happened during childhood, but I would never have remembered it before, but I remembered it then. Like a conversation that happened, a scenario that happened that obviously was affecting me, sitting in there like a bruise, but I didn't have that recollection of it, but somebody triggered it within me. And it was powerful to have that awareness. It was like, oh, then you can move into compassion for yourself. You move into compassion for that child within you, that childlike person within you, or you move into compassion for another person, another scenario, whatever it is, because you can be like, okay, that's just where they're at. They have an emotion, or they have a trauma, or whatever. Or here, let me have compassion for what I went through at that time that I didn't know was really bothering me or sitting with me. So that's the point of like, okay, well, of course you would feel that way. Of course you would feel that way. It's okay to feel that way. And you can be loving and kind to yourself. And that's the other part of not sitting and holding on to shame or guilt, or beating up on ourselves even more than we already naturally do as humans. So I think that's kind of like the full spectrum of how we would work through something depending on what it is. I love to inner voice journal. It's probably one of my favorite things ever. And a lot of times I do it in the morning just as part of my morning routine, where I'll ask my higher self, what do I need to know today? And it's just a quiet, and I think we should do a whole conversation on that. But it is helpful to, when you're going through something, to just sit and write about it, even just free write. Just say, what's coming up for me right now? What do I need to release? Meditation or writing is a form of meditation, because you can get so into that zone where you're just free writing and it's just flowing, and then you'll go back and you will like, wow, I didn't even wasn't even thinking that. It was just all coming out and it was just all flowing. And it's so helpful to read it again. It's so helpful to see your higher self releasing and communicating with you in that way. So
so I think one thing to add to that is just realizing that a lot of the emotions also just are stemmed and rooted in fear. And so in order to move through those things, just know that the difference, and this is another topic with that we can talk about too, is knowing when it's fear-based versus love-based. But I just think it's really important to know that, maybe something did trigger you and it brought up these feelings in you. A lot of times it's just the fear of change, fear of feeling the emotion. And a lot of times people don't even want to feel, because it really is the hard part, to sit with a tough feeling. It is the work. We're always saying, do the work. Like, sit with it, feel it. That is hard for people. And we recognize that. And so that's where compassion comes in. But I was just telling a friend this morning on the phone that the awareness that it's there is step one, and you've already won. So it's like recognizing that and having that awareness is step one. But then I'm such a firm believer, like, take responsibility for that feeling that you're feeling and do the work. And I have to remind myself this often too. And I recognize it, and I still have to go do the work. And it's not overnight. It's not the one time sitting with it and breathing it out. You might have to do that 10 times for that same feeling over that same trigger. So you do it until you find that you've rewired your brain so that particular thing doesn't trigger you anymore, because you've healed it, you've alchemized it. And so that I don't think is, I mean, as long as we're here, those types of things are going to come up.
I was just going to say that.
So get these tools in your toolbox and use them, because really it's about, do you want to stay stuck in that feeling, or do you want to move on to a more blissful, joyful, harmonizing feeling? So that's also what it is. How long do you want to stay in that feeling? Do the work if you want to get out of it. And there's just so many things that you can do to bring yourself back to your centered, more peaceful self. So,
and remember, this is why we're here. You might not remember it, but the whole point of us being here right now is feeling emotion, is having sensory experiences. So there's no shame, no guilt attached to any of that. There's no reason to beat ourselves up about any of it. It is literally why we are here. It's to have these experiences, to feel the emotions, and to learn from them, to grow with them, and to release and heal any parts of ourselves. Because where we're moving to, the evolution of humanity, is beyond this. It is a state of bliss. It is a state of love and peace and compassion at a higher level. And so we're here to do the work right now. That's why things are crazy around us. That's why systems are falling apart. That's why we're seeing what we're seeing happen, which is another conversation for another time.
There's so many rabbit holes I want to go
That's
down.
why we're doing this, because
Yeah.
we're like, okay, we need to talk about that. Okay, we need to talk about that. Okay, so anyway, but my whole point was not to be shaming ourselves or beating ourselves up. It's to be like loving ourselves through the process of evolving. So hopefully that helped today.
Yeah.
And we did turn comments on. They were off. Not intentionally. So now they're back on, and we would love to have chats and hold space for you, or hear about any great tools that you have for processing emotion.
Yeah, let us know how we can help, because we're here for you and ourselves to help us through it too. So
It's just kind of, we're all in this
yeah,
together.
we are. Thanks for being here.
All right, see you next time.